This man ran across America. Now, how many miles is that, Brady?
So my run was 3,311 miles.
And how long did that take you?
218 days.
218 days. So we know how tough just a small amount of running is. Like, this guy ran across America. And for those of you who don't know, this is Brady Silverwood. I wanted to talk to you, Brady, because when we were talking last week about your whole journey of running across America, I thought you had so many lessons and valuable things that people could learn from that we can dive into. So thanks for taking the time, first of all.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me. That's
But
awesome.
before we do, even though while we have the workers in the background working on the house, this is a real interview, people. What are 3 words you would use to describe your journey going across America so people can have a little glimpse of what we're going to talk about?
Sure. Like 3 things I learned?
Just 3 words to describe that whole journey for you, what you went through, what you learned. If you could only use 3 words to give people a brief insight into what we're going to talk about.
Okay. Let's see. I'd probably say perspective, people, and persistence.
3 P's, okay. Perspective, people, and persistence. Now, to go to the point of being willing to run across America, were you always a runner?
No, so I didn't ever this is what's funny whenever I talk to other runners, because I'll meet people who did track and cross country in high school and they're like blown away by what I did. And I never did any of that. Like, I hated running growing up. I actually quit soccer at the age of 13. I was playing competitive soccer, and I quit because I knew the next level up we were gonna do more running. So
Wait.
yeah, it's kind of funny, but no, like when I was, I'd say 22, 23 years old, I joined a run club in Los Angeles when I was a little bit like depressed, and I was a little lost. I had just started losing passion in my work at the time with the company I owned. And yeah, I was kind of looking for like that next thing to do. And throughout that time, I was just partying a lot. I didn't have much of a vision. And one of my roommates just dragged me to this run club one of the days. And I was like, running, this is something that's good for me. Maybe I should do this some more. But it didn't like click right away. Like, it took probably like 2 months where there were some days where the run club founder got my phone number and he'd text me and be like, "Hope to see you at run club this week, Brady." Really nice guy, Luke. And I would just text him like, "Oh, Luke, like I'm not feeling well today." Or it's just bullshit excuses. Am I allowed to cuss on?
Yeah, it's fine.
And anyways, finally it started to click. I was like, I can't have other people holding myself accountable. I need to hold my own self accountable. So started showing up more and more, signed up for a half marathon, did that. Then a couple months later, did the LA marathon. That was like March 2019. And then in May 2019, I just said, screw it, I'm going to run across the country. Went out to New Jersey, called one of my best college buddies, was like, "Do you want to come on this trip with me?" We rented an RV, so when I wasn't running, he would be in the RV, I'd be running. I'd text him after my run, "Hey, I'm at this location." He'd drive the RV over there, find a spot to sleep for the night, then go back to that same spot the next day, and did that for like 7 months.
Now, while you were starting to get into the running, were you still doing the work with the company?
So, yes and no. So I was at the beginning.
With the run club?
Yes, with the run club. And then I think it was like December 2018 is when I actually sold my shares in the company. And then going into the new year, and it was kind of a cool thing too, because when I sold the company, it was like, what do I do next? And I thought to myself, well, running has kind of been the only consistent thing throughout this whole process. And I've been getting a lot better at it. Might as well just kind of go all in on this. So
were you doing the running more of like as a release
Yeah,
from work,
yeah,
or
yeah.
something you were just all of a sudden enjoying, or was it like an escape?
No, at first it was totally just like a stress reliever. It's kind of like you're going into like a hot sauna or something. Like to me, it felt like sweat it out, get some like endorphins going. Like this feels good. And then as it got going and going, it was like, oh, running is so much more than just that to me. It's teaches me discipline, teaches me patience, like all these things that I've been able to learn from running. So, yeah, it went from me hating it to like literally me loving the sport. So,
because you were learning so much, and we got the coffee delivery. You're fine.
Oh,
it doesn't
thank
matter.
you. Yeah.
I'm gonna edit stuff. So
this is my assistant.
yeah.
No, it's my
literally am
girlfriend.
his assistant.
It's my girlfriend, but she
That's an
brought me some
unpaid assistant, by
coffee.
the way. So labor laws. You walked right in front. Got her. Hopefully that one isn't too powerful.
What's that?
Hopefully that's not too powerful.
Yeah, I know. The coffee I had yesterday was straight out of Italy.
So you said that it taught you discipline, which is evident because you just posted on your YouTube, which you guys can check out, link in the description, your documentary of you finishing a 100-mile race, which we can get into later. But yeah, I can see how the running built you discipline to run 100 miles.
Yeah, so what's weird about it is like you'd think from someone who ran across America to like running 100 miles, wouldn't it be that tough? But they're so different because when I'm running across America, every day, all I have to think about is like, today, what do I have to do, you know? And it's usually like a 5-hour period where I'm like, I need to get this running in. But when you're running 100 miles, it's just such a mind, it messes with your mind so much because you can be at mile 50 and feel like you've done so much, but you have another 50 miles to go. So it's a mental challenge, but it's more condensed, right? I kind of felt like with running across America, like I don't need to worry about the other 200 days I have to run across this country. Like all I have to worry about is today. So I really broke it down, and it's probably the biggest kind of secret to my success out there was, I know it sounds so cliche, but like taking it one day at a time. And a good example of this is like, I remember I was in like West Virginia, and I was probably almost 100 days into it, and I called one of my friends, and he basically looked up where I was in the country. He's like, dude, you have like 1,000+ miles left.
Right.
Like, that sucks. And that's kind of how everyone else looked at it, is like how many miles I had left. And I just was stoked on how many miles I had came up until that point. So like if you're like climbing Mount Everest or something, it's like you're at the bottom, as opposed to looking up, you're like looking back and being like, damn, like this is cool. I've gotten up until this point. Let's just focus on getting that next segment, you know?
You said the first thing you learned, the first word you used was perspective, which is evident in that outlook right there. Everyone else had the perspective negatively of like how far you had left.
Definitely.
And you had the perspective of like, look how far I've come.
For sure. Yeah. And patience, man. Like, I think with perspective comes patience. And I felt like I was in a position to do something incredible, you know, and I almost felt like a Eminem Cinderella man. Like I felt like I shouldn't be in this position. So that in its own right made me feel so grateful. The fact that like...
Meaning because you had the time freedom to do it, because you were healthy, or what?
That, but also like talent-wise, like I never looked at myself as like an athlete, or I never, even like while I was running across America, I'm not messing with you, I didn't consider myself a runner at that point. Like I was so new to running, and like I was... Not
even after you finished?
After I finished, I was like, all right, I feel like I'm a runner
But
now.
even during, wow.
Yeah, even during, it was like I rode the bench a lot in like high school sports. I always felt like I had something to prove when it came to sports and whatnot, but I never felt like I actually had the chance or the opportunity. And I didn't have the mental fortitude I had then when I was like, say 16. And so, yeah, when a coach told me I wasn't good enough, I was like, okay, I'm not good enough, you know? And like at this point in my life, when anyone said that to me, it was like, no, like I am. And like, I'll work my ass off and show you. So,
Please excuse the odd colors you guys are going to see in this video. I'm in Serbia right now in the airport editing this interview that I did back in the States, but please excuse the odd brightness and it gets a little too bright in this video. I just had my cameras set on certain settings and then the sun started coming out and it started to get too bright. I tried to fix the colors as much as I could and make it look viewable. But I still wanted to share this interview with you guys because I thought it was valuable. Learned a valuable lesson for me about camera settings and just putting it on auto in a way, auto mode when you're out in the sun. Yeah, it was a good lesson. But I hope you guys still enjoy this interview, but please excuse some of the overly bright look of the rest of the video as the sun starts coming out. Enjoy.
Yeah.
Which you did with the company, but then when you were all of a sudden really getting this huge itch to run and you had done the half marathons, I think you did marathons, and then you had this decision that you just came up with that pretty quick idea of wanting to run across America. Did you have, well, you had to have self-confidence to make that decision, but my question is, what was the feedback you got? Because you were just used to getting all this positive feedback from finishing with the company, selling it, being known as this guy who made it, let's say.
Yeah.
What was the feedback and input from loved ones and friends when you were like, I'm going to run across America?
That's a great question. It actually made me think of like when I was like in high school. I think this really puts it into perspective. Like when I got into my first college, I like posted an Instagram about it. Like I was just stoked to get into college. Like I didn't have like these hopes of like, I'm going to be a business owner someday, or I'm going to go to Harvard, or I'm going to do this and that in my life. Like, if you asked me in high school, I would have been like, honestly, I feel like I'll probably live in the shadows of the success my dad has had in his life. Like, that's kind of how I felt. Like, I wasn't going to do much in my life. And then when I sold the company, you're exactly right. Like, everyone for the first time was like, oh, like, I'm going to pay attention to what you're doing. Like, what are you going to do next? Are you going to start another company? What are you going to do? And so it was like this first, like, pressure of feeling like I had to do something.
Whereas before, you could just do what you want because people weren't even, like, paying attention.
Paying attention, yeah. And then, no, but, like, in the end, man, like, whoever's listening to this, like, whatever you're doing in your life, like, do what you want to do. Like, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And usually, like, they're like, it's always like a reflection. So like if you're doing something really, really cool, someone might be jealous of that and they might talk kind of shit about it, and it's because they look at it as like, this is something I don't feel like I could do in my life. So a lot of that happened. Yeah, I had friends that basically didn't believe that I could do it.
And you're probably excited telling them, first of all, you got to the point mentally that you're willing to make this decision. Then you make the commitment. Then you're willing to tell them. You're probably excited. And then they just shoot you down.
Yeah. So I actually took a month of like, from writing the idea in my journal, took a month to
run across America, the idea.
To just like, you know, I'm not going to tell a soul like this idea. And I think that helped me kind of in my head every day be like, no, I'm going to do this. I don't care when I announce it, when I tell everyone. And right after I announced it to my family, even, my dad was like, hey, you know, like, you haven't posted this on your social media yet. Like, you can back out of this. And that's my dad, you know? So and I really value his opinion. I have my whole life and look up to him. So it wasn't coming. I think he just didn't quite understand why I was doing it. He thought maybe I was trying to prove something to him. That's what he told me. And it was actually the opposite. I wanted to prove to myself that, you know, I am capable of great things. And then I also wanted to document it all and be able to show other people, like, you know, we all have these gifts inside of us, and you know, yours might be running, it might not, it might be something else, but like once you tap into what it is, you kind of know deep down, you're like, there might be something here. Like, go for it, full stop. Don't care what other people think. And like, we all have those gifts inside of us. So
it's interesting that your dad, because he was probably, based on what you're saying about the success he had achieved, and that could have been a shadow you could have lived in, that you would think your dad would be all for the risk taking in this avenue again.
Yeah.
You know, because it sounds like he would, based on what you're saying about the success he had, and yet you were still willing to go through with it, especially when you crave his approval, probably because you said you gave yourself that period.
I think so. I think if say I had the idea and then that day told my dad or told my family and they had that response, who knows, like probably would have messed with my head. I told you this, like when I went into a bookstore a couple days,
right before
running, I picked up a book that said like how to run really, really far. I'm like, oh, this is perfect, you know? And then I started reading a couple pages and it just started messing with my head. I was like, oh crap. Like it just started to make me think of things I hadn't even thought of, with maybe challenges I would face with running across the country with soreness or stretching and all this stuff. And I just put the book down and I was like, you know, I'm like riding a bike. I'm going to fall. I'm going to make mistakes across the country, but like, I want to learn from my experience. I don't want to just have these fears right from the get-go. Like, you know, I just want to get to the start line and then take it from there. So
makes sense, because if you knew all the struggles that would come during the journey, you probably wouldn't even start.
No,
because it'd be too overwhelming.
I also say the probably the most important part that happened, and I talked about this in I wrote a book after this whole run across America, is it was probably 2 or 3 weeks into it. I remember I had an ingrown toenail and it was hurting like hell, and like I was just like, I was in a piss poor mood this one morning and I was like, screw this, screw that, my toe hurts, like, and now I gotta run on this and this is gonna be so crappy. And I remember I thought to myself, like, no, like, come on, like another voice came in saying, Brady, like, no one forced you to run across the country. You chose to do this. And from that point on, I kind of said to myself, like, whatever happens to me out here, whether it's positive or negative, like, I deserve it. And I'm going to take it all in, the good and the negative. And like, if you want something amazing in life, you want an Oscar, you want a Grammy or whatever you want, like, you're going to have to go through the shit to get there. And it's almost like Eric Thomas, I think, says this, like, everyone wants to be a beast, but then when it comes to doing beast things, people don't want to do the beast, the tough parts of being a beast, you know? And so I kind of like made like almost like a promise to myself, like, whatever I go through out here, I'm gonna just roll with it, you know, and I can't complain about it because I know, again, no one forced me to be out here to do this. So
that's a good perspective, because it could change your willingness to handle the negatives.
Totally.
When you look back at the fact that, hey, I chose to do this alternative thing. I chose, in a way, to hear negative shit from family. I chose to deal with an ingrown toenail. So, like, even when you do alternative stuff, like whether it's YouTube or you want to do some different job that your parents don't approve of, like, it's easy to complain when you don't have a lot of people that relate to your journey.
Yeah. And
all the stuff that you're going through, because they're not going through it.
Totally.
But that's a good perspective to add to the first word you used. Like, I decided to have the positive and the negative. So when you started, you know, you picked up that book, and then it was a few days out of starting where? Across America?
We started off the coast of New Jersey in a small town called Keansburg, New Jersey. And I remember it was like a really stormy day. There's maybe like 2 fishermen at the beach. I'm thinking like, oh, this is going to be so like climactic, and like it was really anticlimactic. And like I walked I walked down the dock, and there was, it was kind of cool. Like, I walked to the end of the dock, and I kind of had like a moment to myself to just kind of take it all in and think, like, this is the next time I'll see the ocean is when I'm on the Pacific, which is a crazy thought. And I just knew, man, I was ready. I was like, it's time for me to do something like this in my life, and had no idea what lied ahead and all the challenges and all the amazing experiences I'd come across in this journey. But that was the start of it all. And I think I ran like something like 9-10 miles the first day. Again, before doing all this, like, the most I had ever ran per day, like in a week, was like 5 miles a day. So,
whoa,
even me trying to do 10 miles a day, that was a big jump from where I was already at. But yeah, started off like that. And the first few weeks too, I was pretty organized. So I would say, okay, when we get to this town, I want us to sleep here, and then this is where I'll start the next day. And all that was planned out. And then like a month into the journey, it was just like we had no plans. It was just like, let me see how far I want to run today, how I'm feeling. I would just listen to my body. And after a run, I just text my driver, Nate, and then he'd come, and then we'd find some Walmart parking lot or Dollar General, and it would always work out. And, that's kind of the lifestyle we had across America. So.
I know you touched on it before when you explained that, you had your friend come out, join you for the journey, drive really alongside in a way where you were going to be running.
Yeah.
But wanted people to remember that, which goes back to your second point about people.
Yeah.
You had this one guy being willing to drop whatever he was doing, Nate, you said.
Yeah.
And go and follow you. Not only support you from afar and be like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But give of his time to be there for you supporting-wise, mentally.
Totally.
And follow you along. So I wanted to remind people of that. So after that first day, what were you thinking? Because so many people can have these grand things we want to do, even if it's as simple as like YouTube, for example. You can like making videos and want to do it, and then you really sit down and plan and shoot your first one and edit it all, and you're like, holy shit, that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
So how were you feeling after really that first taste of reality? First day.
I'm not gonna lie, man, like, it was all so new to me and so exciting that I think I was just like, oh, this is awesome.
That's cool.
But the moment you're talking about came on like day 3, and I was feeling sore. I remember waking up, and maybe I didn't sleep very well. And I remember thinking to myself, like, if I'm already really sore
3 days
3 days
how many
into
miles
this,
in is that, like maybe 15 to 20?
I was probably into like 30, probably only like 20 miles at this point.
Out of 3,000?
Yeah, out of 3,000. And I did have some of those thoughts, like, no way, like, this is crazy, And I remember the morning kind of started off a little whack. We were in this like restaurant parking lot, and this lady came over, and she was kind of upset that we were in her parking lot because it was small and she didn't want customers to not have anywhere to park. And then it was like the whole day turned around. We went inside, told her what we were doing. She comped our breakfast meal.
Wow.
It was like the whole day just switched from there on out. And dude, that's kind of why I said people, is because, as long as we had a patient and like open perspective, because most people, I think, like, it's kind of like with dogs, like we like sniff each other out at first, and sometimes we're kind of like fearful of our space, right? So in that example, she was like a little territorial of her space. But once we opened up and said what we were doing, like, we had so many people, Sean, that like didn't even know what we were doing, and they went like full stop, like, hey, do you want to have breakfast over at our place this morning? Or like, they would invite us into their homes. They would let us sleep at their in their backyards with our RV, and like, yeah, man, like the people across this country, it was just so cool to see how generous people were. I had someone one day just leave me trail mix on the highway because they were like,
wow.
They literally wrote, Ultra Runner, this is for you, enjoy. And then I had some trail mix.
And people don't understand how much those little, just the fact that someone cared about you, whether or not it's going to impact your whole day, like a little trail mix, but just the emotional support of someone caring about you. People sometimes don't understand how much that uplifts you when you're in a tough situation.
Totally, man. And like, I see it even today, like on social media, there's some accounts where like they'll walk up to strangers and hand them like a really nice note, and they'll read the note, and it's like totally can change someone's life even, you know? So I think people think they need to do these really, really big gestures, but sometimes it's like the smallest thing will really change someone's day. And like throughout the country, I swear it was like times when I really needed that boost and needed that support, is like people in this country would step up and it was so cool to see.
I remember I had that when I was traveling the country in my car in 2020 and 2021. Like, you just meet some random people at a volleyball court, right? And because of the character you exude and how you interact with them, and you're humble and meek and nice, and they're intrigued by your journey. Like when you're having that bad day, instead of you being a dick, you're still being nice. And then they come right in and they're like, you want to stay at our house? Do you want to come to our Super Bowl party? Do you want? And I had that happen multiple times too. And you realize, man, so many people out in the world, despite how the news and society tries to paint it,
totally
are so loving and giving, and
totally
nothing in return.
And I think it was something like going into the experience, I knew like, oh, we're going to have fun experiences, like kind of adventurous experiences across the country. But I never once thought like, this is going to kind of almost restore my faith in humanity a bit. And like, unfortunately, because of how humans are wired, the fear tactics that the media will like put out, it's like, we are attracted sometimes more to the negative than the positive. So it makes sense when they're thinking of their ratings and all that they put out all this stuff. But it does make people think like all people are like this, when it's really just like a very, very small portion of people that are like that. And like, I'll talk about it. We had one experience where this car just kind of kept circling our RV, and these guys
Where were you think? In the country?
We might have been in like Mississippi, maybe.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. But anyways, they were, they were asking us weird things, and we felt a little uncomfortable. And like, that was one time. And then another time our RV got broken into. But like, dude, you're talking about 218 days and 2 little experiences of that. Whereas, like, I would say we had 100 positive experiences. So you're talking about 2% of our experiences were negative. And in the sense of people trying to do harm to us or whatnot. And, and that was another interesting thing, man, is like, we'd have so many people warn us, be like, oh, you're heading into this town, be careful,
Exactly.
like watch out,
Oh, yeah.
you know? And the only town that they, like most times we'd go to that town, we'd be like, that was awesome. Like, well, why were they saying all that stuff, you know? And like, sometimes I think it's like, people just don't venture out to these other parts in their own state. We met people that we had been to more places in their state that they had ever even seen. And so we knew more about their state than they did. And I think it's, again, that territorial thing is like, if you don't venture out, then yeah, you're just going to be kind of fearful of what you don't know. And so, yeah.
And if you don't go out of that's another lesson, is like, if you don't go outside of your normal sphere of influence or sphere of interactions with people, you're never forced to interact with strangers. And until you're forced to interact with strangers, you realize how negative or positive strangers really are.
Exactly.
and then when you actually experience it, you realize most of them are nice.
Totally. Totally, man. And then also, too, the more life experiences you have, like recently I was in Finland and there was a guy, I could just tell he had this like kind of angry aura to him. Like I think he was just like pissed off, and I don't know what's going on in his life, but I'm in the sauna, and later on in the day, maybe like 30 minutes after I first saw him, he comes in and he tried to like, he's kind of started yelling at this one girl in the sauna. And I remember thinking to myself, like, you know, if the more perspective you have, aka knowing we're all like, you don't know what's going on in someone's life, right? He could have just had a loved one die, and he's grieving with that, and with that comes anger and whatnot. But you just have to understand that that usually when someone acts out at you, it only is reflecting what's going on with that person. It has nothing to do with you. You were just in the
way, in a way.
And yeah, kind of. Yeah. So the more I think I understand that, when I have those rare experiences of a very angry person or something's going on, it's just like, it's not worth it. Not worth it to get, because, you know, like, it can be easy to have your emotions start to,
when they interact with you like that,
reflect theirs, you know? Yeah.
So how much did Nate help you along the way, having that support system right with you when you're running across America?
So much. I kind of joke, my mom is like #1 supporter, but if she was on that trip with me, we joke about this, like, I would have stopped for a massage once a week. She would have been like, you know, let's take 3 days off this week. You're feeling a little sore. She would take it really easy on me. And Nate, to his credit, I told him from the beginning, I was like, you know, unless I come to you and I'm like, Nate, like, seriously, man, I need to take a day off, or I need to take a break, like, don't ever come to me and suggest that, you know? And again, to his credit, he knew not, like, there was a point where I almost tore my Achilles tendon in Arkansas. And this was kind of like the most pivotal point of the whole run.
That's about like halfway through America.
Yeah, it was like day 105. And
wow, 3 months in.
I remember I was so devastated, man, because up until that point, I had so many injuries, and like minor injuries where, like, you know, I'm running and my knee's really messing with me. So after the run, I ice it, stretch it out. I would write in my journal, today, day 55, knee was really hurting. Let's pay attention to that. And then like a week later, when I'm writing in my journal about a different pain, I would go back and be like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, I got past the knee pain. And I kept doing that, and it really gave me this, like, strength to know, like, don't get super nervous if something starts to hurt. But again, then in Arkansas, I started feeling this thing in my Achilles tendon, and I was like, something feels like loose and something doesn't feel right. And I tried to just power through it, and I couldn't, and I started like limping, and I knew like this isn't good. And then the next day it got worse, and then because I was walking on it, my right leg, it was my left Achilles, my right leg started to hurt. I was like, oh, I must have been overcompensating, and it was just bad. And even during that, you know, Nate could have easily been like, when I was like, hey, I think I need to take a rest, he could have been too hard on me and been like, no, you're getting back out there. And he was like, all right, let's do what you need to do, and like, we're going to get you better, and we're going to get you back out there. And that was the first part in the whole trip where I knew I don't have full control over what happens out here, because up until that point, I put my 100% heart and soul into it. I stretched every day, I iced, I did all the things I was supposed to do, and yet the whole run could end halfway through. And for what, you know? So it was the most scared I felt throughout the whole run. And I remember I just kind of let go, and I was like, you know, I can only control what I can control at this point, which is icing and resting. And I remember I took 2 days off. We were in a Dollar General parking lot. And Nate jokes about this. He was like, you literally did not leave the RV for 2 days. I didn't want to do anything that was like movement wise that would add extra stress to the injury. So yeah, I was just like watching Netflix and like reading messages and posting. And honestly, that's another thing. So many people were like, Brady, you can't give up, man. You got this. And another guy walking across the country, Mike Posner, he was sending me supportive messages, and that was really cool. And anyways, day 108, I got out back to the spot I had finished at, and I told Nate, I was like, just film this. And I knew, I was like, he might be filming my first few steps and film me tearing my Achilles tendon. Like, I don't know how the tendon's gonna hold up. And I took like 2 steps, you know, kind of slow jog, and I gave him a thumbs up. And like after that day, I ran 50 days in a row. And I remember it was just kind of like, you get through that and the rest is history, man. Like, I can always look back on that experience and like, if I could get through that, man, I could run across the whole country. And it's weird how things work out, but I'm telling you, if that didn't happen, I probably wouldn't have been able to make it all the way across the country. That gave me this like added like strength. Like, I got through that shit, you know? And what's funny, I think I probably told you this, but when I finished, I got a tattoo of the country, and I put it on my Achilles tendon right here. So here, should I get up and show the camera?
I'll do it later. I can do it. Like, I can show a shot later. But yeah, you're fine.
So it's like right here. Yeah,
that's cool, man.
You'll see that. I like just mess up all the sound right now.
No, you're fine. It's good.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say is that having that, you can eat it if you want. It's fine.
Oh yeah.
Having that perspective that you learned about needing to let go, was probably a big contributor about why you had so much more fuel. Not only the learning and to overcome it, and you learn the balance of pushing yourself, taking a break, but I can imagine learning that lesson of I need to let go and not be so focused on controlling everything. I bet you that gave you so much more energy and less stress the last halfway, which is a huge lesson everybody has to learn when you do something, let's say, alternative in life or different. Like, you have no idea how well it's going to go. And if you carry that stress with you all the time, you won't be able to make it.
It's also, too, like, if you're like me and you're not, I'm not like necessarily a perfectionist, but I'm my toughest critic, you know? Right. And so with something like this, again, you can do everything right and you don't get that result you're looking for, you know? And I had lots of days where I, thought I would run a little bit further and I didn't. And, it doesn't necessarily go your way, but that's life. Like, as long as you can keep showing up, like, that's what matters. And I think too, kind of back to that, like the tough experiences across the country, it was always like, I call them character days, but there was like a week when I was in Tennessee and this was pre-COVID stuff, 2019. And I remember I had a really tough cold. Like, I was blowing my nose all the time. There was some runs that week that I was literally downing like Dayquil before the run.
Jesus.
And I was just so out of it, would bring Kleenex with me on the run so I could like blow my nose mid-run. And I remember it was like that one week I did my biggest set of miles. I think it was like 140 miles. And it's like, when you go through things like that, you realize, like, we always think we gotta feel the best to perform the best, and we gotta have all this motivation, all this other stuff. But you usually don't. And it's like, if you know, like, oh, I could be feeling the worst and still get this done, then it's kind of like, you become less attached to how you're feeling before you go out to go do something. So I would wake up and tell myself, like, if I feel great today before the run, cool. If I feel like crap, cool. Like, whatever, I can still get the work in. So, and it was the same premise. I wrote about this in my book with having doubts. I'm not going to sit here and say the whole time across the country, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. I got this in the bag, you know? Like, there's plenty of points where I was like, whew, like, this is tough today. I don't know. And I just realized, like, as long as I put in the action and I, like, woke up, tied my shoes, started stretching, got out the door, as long as I showed up, then I would give myself the chance to succeed. And sometimes your mind can just play tricks on you and you just can't listen. So.
That's a really good point, because like we get so tied to, I know I do, like even with videos or like before classes, or I remember with sports in high school, some of my best golf matches where I like shot under par and stuff was when I felt terrible on the range. I was hitting it everywhere, or I was distracted because of some test. And yet you would think, you know, like everyone talks about preparation and getting your mind right before you do something.
Yeah.
That's actually a good point, man, because I see that so many times with myself. You just psych yourself out because of how you feel, because of how you think it's going to go.
Totally.
Like I remember some of my biggest videos now that got me monetized, like I thought about not even doing them.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't it funny how that works out?
It's just like you say, you just keep trying and showing up, and you have really no control on the outcome in a way, because you never know what can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So that was a big turning point. You got halfway through, you had that mindset, you got over the Achilles thing, and then was it just smooth sailing the last half?
No, so like when I got into even Texas, I started dealing with something new, and that was just leg pain. And the only way I can explain it is like a throbbing pain. So like not even just soreness, but like it felt like active pain in my it was like kind of like my left upper thigh. And it got so bad that I started taking like, I would take like, I think it was really bad. It's probably really not good for me, but like 10 like extra strength Tylenols. Like I was taking so much of this shit and it really wasn't doing much. And I remember again, like it's kind of that idea of like accepting the situation you're in as opposed to resisting it. There was one day where I was like, screw it, I'm going to take none of these pills, I'm going to feel the pain, whatever. And that helped me just get through it. Wow. And I stopped taking the pain. But like it was so bad, man. Like, Sean, the only time I wouldn't feel in pain was when I was sleeping.
Jesus.
Every moment I was up, even when I wasn't running, it was just throbbing.
Were you thinking of giving up then?
I don't think it got to that point. Again, maybe because of the Achilles, but it was just such an uncomfortable thing. And I remember even when I got to like New Mexico and like still, you know, there would be some days where I'd feel some more of that pain. And I remember thinking like, it doesn't matter what my legs feel or whatever, like we're going to make it to San Diego. I'm going to make it to the West Coast.
And as you got towards that West Coast, finishing the 3,000 miles, finishing the what day? How many days?
So I finished, I think it was December 8th, 2019. It was 218 days, like 7 months and 8 days.
So as you came to that end, a lot of times in life it seems like when we get towards the end of our time living somewhere, our time with some journey, our time working somewhere, finishing some project, there seems to be a ton of learning that just flows together as you get towards the end. Totally. I found at least.
Totally.
So as you were nearing that coast of San Diego, finishing, doing something that you had all these doubts for, you made it through this journey, you're getting close. What do you think you were putting together and having all this? What learning were you gathering, you think, as you were finishing?
The last like month or so is really hard because you can't really time like what day I'm going to make it to the coast. You know, I can like look at my miles and kind of average things out. And I remember I had to pick a weekend because I didn't want to do it in the weekday when people got school or other stuff. I wanted a bunch
people to come see,
family and friends from San Diego where I grew up to come out for that last day. And I didn't just want them to watch. I wanted them to run the last 3 miles with me. And that was kind of purposeful because I could barely run 3 miles the first day of that run club. So I wanted to show people like,
wow,
you're going to run these 3 miles with me. And I want you to think in your head, like, that's what I did like about a year ago. And then I went on this, sorry, there's like ants and bugs over here. I also get bit by mosquitoes like all the time.
I saw your arm, like you already got.
Yeah, I got one right here.
You got it on your bicep too.
But yeah, wanted a lot of people out there for that last day. And so a month out, I'm advertising, posting about it. And then finally we get there and we get to Torrey Pines High School, which is where I went to high school.
San Diego, basically.
Yeah. And it was literally perfectly 3 miles from the beach that I wanted to finish at.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it was, that's when I knew. I was just like, this is just all so meant to be. And the whole trip felt meant to be. It was like, you know, we would pick a random restaurant after like passing it and like being like, back. Oh, let's go back. I kind of feel like we need to go back to this restaurant. And then we meet these just beautiful people that were just so nice to us and warming and like gave us like hope and strength on the trip. And like these things just kept happening and happening. And anyways, everyone's in the parking lot that last day.
At the high school?
Yeah, ready to like say hi to me and Nate. And it's early in the morning and there's like news crews outside the RV and so much different than that first day in New Jersey.
Where nobody was there?
It was just me and Nate.
Was it sunny this day? Compared to the gloominess?
It was raining. It was raining again. So we started with rain, ended with rain. And I actually love running in the rain. I don't love the lightning storms because the lightning kind of will sketch me out at points. But when it's just raining, I love it, man. I'll run in the rain every day. I actually prefer it, really. So anyways, everyone's outside of the RV and thankfully, I put a sign on the RV because I wanted us to just have our own kind of moment in that morning before going out and talking to everyone. Yeah. And so I think we kind of came together, maybe said like a prayer or something. And, you know, both of us really during the trip weren't like, I feel like I'm not really like as religious as I was growing up, but like spiritual. And I felt like spirit on that trip. With those just encounters of meeting these people that felt like what? This is like a little too good to be true. Like how could have this person met me at this day
when I
needed it, you know? And so in that RV, man, everyone kind of, you know, you think about it, you think like, oh, when I'm running into the ocean, is that when I'm going to have an emotional moment and start crying or whatnot and feel it all? And it was in that RV that morning when I went through just like this grateful exercise of like, what am I grateful in my life? What am I grateful for in my life? And I couldn't even get to like the second thing I was grateful for. And I just like the gnarliest cry I've ever had in my life, but it was like, it was totally uncontrollable. And I just let it all out. And the reason I was just bawling is I remember feeling like, everything good and bad that I had went through in my life was for the purpose of me to be right there in that moment. And if I didn't go through all those things, I wouldn't have been there in that moment. So it was just kind of being like, wow, like don't question it, you know, like this, everything has its purpose. And so, yeah, like I got chills and everything. And then I went outside, you know, said a couple words to everyone, and then we ran to the beach and jumped in the ocean. I remember the ocean felt so good that like if everyone wasn't on the beach, I would have just stayed in there for like 5 hours, but went back on the beach and celebrated with everyone. But and me and Nate shared a special moment because we're, you know, we kind of talked about this, but some people aren't there with you at the start line and they're just there with you at the finish. And he was there with me throughout every single up and down of that trip. And I couldn't have done it without him, seriously. And
7 months.
Yeah, it was
he set aside.
Yeah, it was like a bond almost that, like, you can't really get a bond like that with someone until you go through something. What the? That was cool. It was like a fountain out of the pool there.
So after you finished, you know, so many times in life, I think we chase the result and the achievement, you know. Did you find that looking back after you achieved it, was it as much of an ecstasy, fulfilling, joy-filled thing you built it up in your mind to be, or was it more like, okay, I did this, it was great, but really the journey was even more enjoyable than like getting to the point of finishing?
100% the journey was, I'd say that last day was just like, maybe on that trip there was like 20 just days that were like, whew, like awesome, you know? Yeah. And that last day was one of them. So yeah, I think the way the challenge was set up in that, like, if you're not in the moment, you're going to be constantly thinking of how many miles you have left and all the struggles you're going to face, and like, you're not going to be able to do it. Like, I had to stay in the moment, and because of that, it was just, we had awesome experiences, man. Like in Nashville, we went down Music Row, saw all these concerts. We, in New Mexico, we went to the what is it? The national, I think it's the National White Sands monument out there, and you see all the white sands. In DC, I ran by the White House. Like, there's all these cool things we did, and experiences that I was just like, you know, I'm going to be able to have these memories forever. And yeah, I think a lot of the time though, we are kind of trained to like, ooh, when I get this promotion or when I get this result, that's going to be worth it, just that moment there. And like, even my last 100-mile race, like, the emotional moment I had was like mile 93. It wasn't even mile 100. It was the moment I was like, wow, I'm going to do this, you know? But like, throughout the whole day, I was having fun, you know? And like, yeah, there's the parts that were absolutely terrible, and but understandably, you know? So yeah, I think the process is what I try to go for. I say one of my chapters in my book is the journey, not the destination, you know, go for the journey. So easier said than done.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, but
yeah,
makes sense. So after doing that, I'm sure it gave you much better perspective when you went into doing your 100-mile race, like you just talked about, which you just posted that documentary, which people can watch on your channel. But I think those 3 words you used at the beginning were effective. Not only did they have the 3 Ps, which was very artistic of you.
Yeah.
But
thank you.
Perspective.
I'm an artist. Picasso.
Another P. Stop with the P's.
I didn't even think of that. That was good.
Perspective, people, and persistence. I think that was a perfect way to describe it after what you just explained the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like, I think some of the time too, like, we just don't even give ourselves the chance to fail, you know? So like, when I think of showing up and when I think of that day I put that book down, like, we hear what other people are saying, and we hear maybe the fears, and we listen to those thoughts, and like, fears are our future thoughts that, you know, we haven't experienced it, but in our head, we're going to let that define our experience and control us, really. And so, with this experience, it's like I gave myself the chance to fail. And I failed a lot, but I learned from it and I got back up. And there's a great quote. It says something like, failure.
Oh, this was in the this was in the Texas one at the end.
The
I remember
Texas
this.
doc. How did it go? It was like failure can knock you down.
No, it was saying failure is not when you fall.
No, not when you fall down.
But when you
failure is
stay
when
down or don't decide to
when
go.
you don't get back up or something like that. And it's so true. It's like, I think we kind of have this like ego with like, oh, if we like failing's not cool, and it's like you should be ashamed of yourself if you fail. And it's like all the people we idolize and look up to, they're like the biggest failures of anyone out there. Most people don't even give themselves the space to fail, you know? But like Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant, all these people we idolize in sports and everything. Like, I think Kobe, towards his last days, was talking about like how he missed thousands of shots, but he just kept shooting, you know? Like, everyone praises him for the shots that went in, but it's like he had to shoot and fail so many times and get over that and keep shooting, you know? So
even like how you did, you were willing to fail by doing your first 100-mile race, that's still on your YouTube, right?
yeah,
Where he failed.
yeah. Watch that if you're gonna watch them. I think watch that and then watch the keys, because I won't give anything away, but yeah.
But like
just watch
being
it
willing to do
like that.
and document a 100-mile race, you have no idea. Like, you gave yourself the opportunity to fail, what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yet, had you not even done that race out of fear of failure,
Yeah.
like, you would have been so much farther back in life, in learning, and growth.
I learned a lot from that experience.
It was cool to learn through you by watching the video, by the way.
That's what's up. Yeah. So, I actually even learned more of the recent one, which is weird because it was like a so-called success, but in that I just found that like there's always a low that we'll go through in life, and there's always going to be a high, but it's kind of like the rainbow after the rain. Like, there's always going to be a high followed from a low, and then a low followed from a high. Like, you can't, it's like in investing or business, like something just can't go up forever.
Right.
Like, it, you know, so.
Well, if you guys want to check out Brady's YouTube, I'll put a link in the description. He's got some impressive documentaries on there. I've seen one already. I'm going to see the next one because he texted it to me, which just got uploaded. So
Yeah. It's a very new channel. I think I have like 103 subscribers, so.
And you guys helped me out when I had like 20 subscribers, and Gideon told y'all to subscribe. So you guys can do the same thing because his videos are good.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for the time, Brady. Appreciate it.
Of course, bro. This is awesome.
Man.
Good stuff.
Now you can enjoy your sandwich finally.
How was that? Was that good?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Liked
definitely
it.
is.